transparency, justice. No one is above the law. Those are things that ought to be true, and something that people and governments all around the world and throughout history, and certainly the United States today, deserve. And oftentimes the people who are in power do everything they can to prevent every one of those things because it benefits them. And there's probably no better example of that right now than this whole fiasco of the Epstein files and all of the things that implies, because allegedly there is a list compiled, and I'm certain that there is one, whether it's a specific one or whether it's something that's just a symbol from other places is irrelevant. There are known people on that list of abusers. There have been women who were victims of this over a long period of time, of the Epstein dark world. And to date, none of them have been held accountable except for the sole man of Jeffrey Epstein and, of course, Ghislaine Maxwell, his principal accomplice. But there are a lot of other people who remain in the dark, and the victims themselves are fed up with all of this. Now, you know that prior to the election last year, many of the Trump supporters and many Republicans were emphatic about saying we need the list released. Everyone who's on the list needs to be exposed. Nobody should be covered over. Nobody should be protected. Anyone who abused underage women should have any kind of protections at all until actually they took office. And then some of those who were the biggest supporters of releasing the list suddenly discovered there is no list, as a matter of fact. And we just want this to go away. And of course, at the head of that list is President Trump. He has been leading the charge to get this suppressed, to get people to distracted from it, to try and squelch it whenever it does hit the headlines. And so far, those efforts have not been successful. And many of the victims were eagerly waiting on what Trump could do to finally bring some transparency and some justice for them. But now then they have reached their limit. And this past Wednesday, there was a press conference in front of the White House, in front of the Capitol, led by a couple of or a number of bipartisan members of the House of Representatives, that came out and said, hey, it's time to release all the files, all of them. That's what they're trying to get. And there was a number of the survivors spoke, and this particular one here from Lisa Phillips, I found very persuasive.
Transparency is justice. Release the files, end the secrecy, and stand with us in declaring that no one, no billionaires, no politicians, not world leaders, is above the law. Several of us Epstein survivors have been discussing creating our own list of names. We know the names. Many of us were abused by them. Now, together as survivors, we will confidentially compile the names we all know were regularly in the Epstein world. And it will be done by survivors and for survivors.
I just can't help but just applaud the incredible courage it takes to do something like that for Lisa and all of the other women who came forward publicly. I can only imagine just the trauma, the emotional trauma that had been leveled against them, basically turned into sex slaves against their wishes and abused by powerful men. And I certainly hope that they get exactly what they asked for. You see that they've tried to be patient, but their patience has not been paid off. So now they're taking additional steps. Now, it is really important and noteworthy, specifically what she said there. She said there are billionaires, politicians, and world leaders who need to be held accountable. This is not some minor issue. And I can promise you that this is one case where partisanship doesn't even exist. It doesn't matter anything about whether you're a conservative, a liberal, a independent, no tag at all. The human heart, when you get power, wants to be satiated. And too often they use illegal, unethical, and immoral means to get that done. And so there's people on all across the whole political spectrum. She said world leaders as well. Now, I assure you that every one of those world leaders, past, current, or well, not future, but past or current, is terrified of this coming out. And I frankly worry about these women, because those people and the billionaires that she mentioned are certainly have every incentive and means to try and suppress this. They've been successful so far, no matter what has happened, because there's been a lot of lawsuits and a lot of money being paid to a lot of these victims now that it's come out. But so far, they have been successful in keeping their names out of it. So other than, I think, Prince Philip, I believe it is, from the UK, he's one of the very few that's actually been partially named, though he himself has not come under actually any legal definition or legal action so far. So, but he's one of probably hundreds of people. And she also specified in there the people who routinely came, i.e. this was not a one-off kind of situation, though that by itself, a single time, is worthy of justice and worthy of punishment, because one time is one time too many. But these that they're talking about were routinely in the Epstein world, they said. So those people, I don't care how much money that they have paid, they need to be held to personal account. And folks, if we stay in a world where, and it doesn't matter, United States, Europe, other countries, who knows, if the rich and elite can continue to do illegal and immoral activities and stay hidden up, and sometimes have to shell out a few dollars here and there out of their extraordinary wealth, which they'll never miss, we're in a world of hurt, because the longer you do things and you get away with them, the more you're going to do them, and the more you're going to exploit the powerless. And that is a horrible situation, which is bad for everybody. It's bad for any community. It's bad for any country. It's bad for humanity. And it's something that we need to all get together on, all regular people who also want justice and transparency. We need to do everything we can to put pressure on the politicians, all of them, so that this continues to be exposed and that we don't get stopped here. I was a little bit disappointed that on that press conference, they didn't release it then instead of just announcing it, because I think that's a bit of a tactical error and a risk, because now then you give those who are on that list additional time to try and squelch it by whatever means. And I don't put anything past these people because they have done a lot to keep it hidden so far. And I just am concerned about the lengths to which some could go to prevent this list from getting out. And I hope it happens very, very soon, like in the next few days would be ideal. One other supporter of this has been Marjorie Taylor Greene, Representative Greene, who, of course, has been a big supporter of President Trump. But even she was out there and she made this comment.
It's a scary thing to name names, but I will tell you, I'm not afraid to name names. And so if they want to give me a list, I will walk in that Capitol on the House floor and I'll say every damn name that abused these women. I can do that for them, and I'd be proud to do it.
And I believe her. As a matter of fact, there's a piece out in the Wall Street Journal today where it's talking about why Marjorie Taylor Greene broke with Trump on Epstein. And you don't have to get very far down into this article, and you kind of see her viewpoint, where she says the truth needs to come out and the government holds the truth. And so she wants to bring whatever pressure she can from the legislative branch to the administrative branch, and to get that list released, to get all the files released, not just a list, because you remember earlier this year, I think it was in February, where Pam Bondi went on Fox News and confidently declared, when asked directly about a list, not any files, not anything else, not something you had to figure out, but a list of the abusers, she said, "It is on my desk. The list is on my desk." And then, of course, she famously backtracked from that and says, "Oh, well, I didn't say it was a list, just that there was a file on my desk that I had to go through. And once I did, come to find out there's no list at all." Isn't that crazy? Yeah, I'm not buying it. And then, of course, you have Kash Patel, the FBI director, Dan Bongino, deputy director, who were both emphatic about releasing the list. And now they claimed also there's no list. Everybody has gone to ground that used to be boisterously saying about this list. on the administration, except for Marjorie Taylor Greene. So that's a big issue there. And listen, she is going to have an uphill battle because President Trump does not want to release the list. In fact, I have never seen him spooked on anything, never on anything. He's like water off a duck's back, no matter what has come at him. I'm talking lawsuits, convictions, verbal attacks, lawfare from the Biden administration. I mean, a bunch of stuff. It's just like water off a duck's back, except for this. And he has done everything in his power to obfuscate, to try and distract, and to try and minimize what's going on. And a matter of fact, in a Truth Social, I think it was the day before yesterday, he posted this, and it's kind of a long screed, really. And he just said it's all the Democrat Party's fault. And, they did all this stuff and they were bad and they took his money. But, they don't really want this to come out. He was referring to the Wednesday press conference. They're just doing it now for political reasons. And then he concludes by writing, "This is merely another Democratic hoax. It's not even true, apparently, just like Russia, which is what he says all the time about something that genuinely was a hoax, or at least a large portion of it." And so he's trying to connect that to something in the past so that you see this current one, so his supporters will not believe it and therefore won't put any pressure on him. All the others, in order to deflect and distract from the great success of a Republican president and the record-setting failure of the previous administration and the Democratic Party. The Department of Justice, and here we get to the bottom line, the Department of Justice has done its job. They have given everything requested of them, i.e. all the documents, now everything to be released. So he said, because they've released some things. He claims that's it. There's nothing left. It's time to end the Democratic Epstein hoax and give the Republicans credit for the great, even legendary job that they are doing. It's time to end the Democratic hoax. So he is trying to squelch this again. And he's tried to do this a couple of times before, but so far people have not let it go. Now, listen, I'm not in the least claiming that the Democrats are not motivated, at least many of them, by an attempt to politically embarrass President Trump or to weaken him or so. I'm sure that they are. But if they are, and if there's something in those files to see, then that's a secondary consideration. Whether their motivations are pure or as dark as oil, we deserve to see those files. Because if something bad has been done by billionaires, politicians, and world leaders, we deserve to find out. And we deserve to see it. And those women, hundreds of them who have been victims, deserve justice. That above all. I mean, if you have been the victim of a horrible crime like that, and yet nothing is done to rectify it or justify it, and then society basically condones it, and you never get justice. I mean, that's going to take whatever was by itself a horrible psychological problem and something that's going to be very difficult to overcome, and then compound it. Let's don't compound it. And that showed you Marjorie Taylor Greene there a second ago. Representative Massey also replying and responding to what President Trump put in that Truth Social had this to say.
I think it's shameful that this has been called a hoax. Hopefully today we can clear that up. This is not a hoax. This is real. There are real survivors. There are real victims to this criminal enterprise.
And that's exactly what it is. It was a criminal enterprise. It's something that was international. It was, broadly spread over. It definitely catered to lots of the rich. Of course, there's all kinds of rumors out there that it had to do with the Israeli Mossad, with the U.S. CIA, with MI6 out of UK. Who knows? Maybe there's some truth to that. Maybe there's no truth to that. Maybe it's hardcore real. I have no earthly idea, nor does anyone else in the public. And we deserve to know. We need to see all of these files to find out everybody who is involved with this. Because maybe Epstein was doing a lot of this stuff, but there most likely were plenty of enablers. But what we know for a fact is that there is a list. And you saw Lisa Phillips there validate that. There is a list. And if you won't take it out of the files, they'll provide it for you. Now, this is not going to be hearsay. As she specified in that opening soundbite we used, these women who were going to compile the list were abused by them. Firsthand knowledge. So it's not hearsay. It's what they actually experienced. And listen, if there's any doubt that this actually exists and that people in authority know about it, just consider these few facts here. There's been a number of lawsuits out there. 100 people, mostly victims, have been paid $121 million in one class action lawsuit. A separate 100 victims was paid $150 million. And then there was a huge class action lawsuit against JP Morgan Chase where $290 million was paid out. I promise you, as firmly as I can, none of these wealthy people, especially the bank, which, by the way, was accused of knowing about all this abuse and intentionally doing all these bank transactions with Epstein, knowing what was going on. That's why they had to pay this money. That's why they were brought up on charges. Nobody pays this money unless they know they're guilty and they want to keep it quiet. If they were innocent, if nothing had happened, they're not going to pay that kind of money. Not that kind of money. That's a lot of money being paid here. So you can't have people acknowledging some level of guilt. And I understand all the legal stuff. They didn't legally acknowledge guilt. They just said, no, we would rather not take this to court and all that. I get all that. That's dissembling. That's just cover. And it's thin cover at that. Nobody pays that kind of money unless they know that the last thing they want is to go to trial and have discovery so that everybody sees the evidence. They want to keep it quiet. Well, you don't pay that kind of money unless there are very wealthy, powerful men who do not want their names out there. So there is a list, and people do know who has done some of these things. Probably some of the victims don't even know who some of the people were. If they weren't famous or well known, they may not have known. They just know somebody paid some money to Epstein, and all of a sudden they had to do these dastardly acts. But they know some of them because they were well known. And according to what this Lisa Phillips said here, and some of these other victims at that press conference, they know the names and they're going to compile them. And listen, it's likely that there are probably hundreds of people on here. There are probably, and we're just looking at this country, there are probably Republicans, there are probably Democrats, there are probably well-known business people, and they're going to be humiliated and shamed. And I think that it would probably, it's going to cause some real trauma, I think, in our country when we see the full list of these names. Let it begin. Let that trauma happen because it needs to. It's necessary to get to a situation where we try at least and get some justice for these victims. But also understand, folks, if they don't succeed, and if this list is never brought out, and if these people are never exposed to any kind of justice at all, I mean, legal is great, but and appropriate, but I mean, even just the public shame and humiliation is necessary, because if they succeed, they themselves and others in their class, in their category, will continue to believe they are above the law and that there is no transparency and that there won't be any justice and that power can exploit the powerless. That will continue on, if not expand, if this doesn't see the light of day. It's a much bigger deal, I think, than it appears to be. It's not just a salacious issue that would be interesting to read for people, et cetera, make a bunch of headlines. This is something that we need as a corrective to a bad direction that our country is going writ large across any political boundaries, across any strata. It's just these wealthy elite, this super wealthy elite, that is dominating so many things in our politics, in our business world, you name it. I mean, they're on top of everything, and there's got to be some accountability, folks. It's beyond time for that. This is a great place to start.